Millionaire teaches his spoiled daughter a lesson by forcing her to marry the humble gardener she despises. In the cold, luxurious world of the Han family, Soo-min is like a rare jewel locked away in a vault of gold. At 24, she has everything she could ever want: designer clothes, a luxurious penthouse, an imported car, and trips to the most exclusive destinations around the world. But despite this abundance, Soo-min feels trapped, like a caged bird. Every step she takes is carefully monitored by her father, Han Tae-jin, the relentless CEO of the Han Group empire. Known as an uncompromising man, Tae-jin rules the family with the same rigidity he applies to his business. But Soo-min is not the submissive daughter he had expected. Although she grew up within the gilded walls of the Han mansion, she has always nurtured a secret dream: to become an artist and live a life of freedom, far from her father's shadow. For years, Soo-min kept this desire locked deep in her heart, until one day, during a business dinner, she finally breaks. In a trembling but resolute voice, Soo-min stands up before everyone and announces, "Father, I've decided to follow my own path. I'm going to become an artist, and nothing will stop me." Her unexpected declaration leaves the table in shock, but Han Tae-jin responds with a cold smile that makes Soo-min shudder. He rises calmly, and without a word, gestures for her to follow him into his office, away from the guests' prying eyes. Once they enter the office, Tae-jin closes the door, creating a frozen silence between them. With cold, piercing eyes, he stares at her. "Soo-min," he begins, his voice filled with disdain. "Do you think you can simply defy my orders? You're nothing but a spoiled girl who knows nothing about life." Soo-min feels her father's words cutting into her like a blade. But before she can respond, Tae-jin continues, his expression even darker this time. "Since you're so eager to experience freedom, I'll give you something to reflect on. In 1 month, you will be married. You're already promised to Kang Ji-hoon." The shock leaves Soo-min breathless. She cannot believe what she's hearing. "Ji-hoon? The gardener?" she asks, incredulous, feeling a mix of confusion and anger rise within her. Tae-jin looks at her coldly. "Yes, Kang Ji-hoon. He will be your husband. Perhaps this way you'll learn the lesson you so desperately need, Soo-min." Soo-min feels her legs weaken. It cannot be possible that her father is truly imposing a marriage with the gardener. She only knows Ji-hoon by sight, a man who has worked in the Han Mansion gardens for several years, always in silence, caring for the plants and trees as if they were part of his own soul. He is reserved, speaks little, and has never shown any interest in interacting with the mansion's residents, especially her. Desperate, Soo-min pleads with her father, trying to convince him that this marriage is absurd, but he is inflexible. For Tae-jin, this is the perfect punishment for his rebellious daughter. And so, with no other choice, Soo-min finds herself forced to accept the imposed fate. The month passes quickly, and the wedding day arrives. Unlike Soo-min's dreams, this ceremony is cold and solitary. In an empty hall decorated with only the bare minimum, she stands before Ji-hoon, the man she never imagined would become her husband. He is there, wearing a simple suit with an impassive expression. Soo-min feels the humiliation rise in her face, but decides not to show weakness. She exchanges vows in silence, without even looking at him, and soon the ceremony ends without celebrations, without friends, only her father's severe gaze watching everything. As soon as the ceremony ends, Soo-min and Ji-hoon are taken to their new home, a modest apartment far from the luxury of the Han mansion. When she enters, Soo-min is horrified by the place. The furniture is modest, the space is small, and she feels as if she is living in a nightmare. Ji-hoon watches her in silence, his expression calm and serene. He doesn't try to approach her or make any friendly gesture. Instead, he keeps his distance, respecting her space but at the same time showing a firmness that bothers her deeply. He is not submissive, as she expected him to be. He stands beside her like an impenetrable wall. Soo-min then decides to make Ji-hoon's life a torment. If he accepted this forced marriage, she would do everything to make him give up. She begins to provoke him, making absurd demands, trying to push him to the edge, but Ji-hoon remains unchanged. He continues to be calm, only observing her with patience, refusing to give in to her provocations. Days pass, and each interaction between them is charged with tension. On a rainy day, Soo-min, frustrated and exhausted, yells at Ji-hoon, questioning why he won't simply leave her alone. But to her surprise, he only looks at her with that deep, enigmatic gaze she cannot decipher. "I am here because it was my choice, Soo-min," he says calmly. "You can hate me as much as you want, but I'm not going to walk away from this commitment." In that small apartment, a new reality begins to take shape for Soo-min. She, who has always been surrounded by luxury and comfort, now feels as if she's in a cage. The walls are cramped, the furniture is old, and the space is so small that even breathing feels like a challenge. Every detail of this place is a reminder that, from now on, her life will no longer be the same. Every morning, Soo-min is woken up by the loud alarm clock that Ji-hoon uses. Her irritation grows as she adjusts to the oppressiveness of their daily routine. There's an old coffee maker, a two-person dining table, an outdated television, and a sofa that creaks whenever someone sits on it. Ji-hoon, however, seems perfectly at ease. He goes about his daily tasks with an infuriating calm, almost as if he doesn't even notice Soo-min's presence, which only fuels her disdain. Determined to keep a respectful distance, Ji-hoon watches Soo-min from afar, trying not to invade her space. But this only makes her angrier. She expected him to crack, to show irritation, to reveal some weakness. Anything that would give her a reason to hate him even more. Yet he remains unbothered, patiently ignoring her attempts to provoke him. During breakfast one morning, in one of the first weeks of their forced cohabitation, Soo-min finally snaps. She deliberately knocks over her coffee cup, glaring at him directly, daring him to react. Ji-hoon simply observes her with a serene expression before calmly getting up to clean the mess. "You don't need to do anything for me," she says, her voice filled with contempt. "I didn't ask you to clean anything." Ji-hoon continues cleaning without a word, only deepening her frustration. His unbreakable calmness and silence feel like an affront. As the days go by, Soo-min finds living without the luxuries of the mansion to be true torture. There's no one to serve her, to cook for her, or to take care of her belongings. Furthermore, she begins to notice how meticulous and disciplined Ji-hoon is. He wakes up early to do his tasks, keeps the house organized, and even prepares meals without ever asking for her help. At first, Soo-min ignores him, but little by little, she starts to notice the small gestures Ji-hoon makes, such as leaving her food ready or heating the water for her shower. These tiny details awaken a curiosity in her, even though she's reluctant to admit it. One night, after another silent argument, Soo-min goes to bed filled with anger. But as the midnight silence settles over the small apartment, she hears footsteps from the other side of the room. Peeking through the slightly open door, she sees Ji-hoon sitting by the window, gazing out, lost in thought. She notices that he seems to carry a weight he never shows outwardly. It unsettles her, and she begins to wonder what secrets lie behind that calm and mysterious expression. The next day, during a heavy rainstorm, Soo-min heads out in anger to take care of some errands, but without realizing it, she forgets her umbrella. When the rain picks up, she returns to the apartment, drenched and exhausted. Ji-hoon, seeing her soaked, offers her a towel without saying a word, but she refuses, crossing her arms defiantly. "I don't need your help, Ji-hoon. I'm only here because my father forced me to be, and you know that." He looks at her for a moment before replying, "I know, but being here was my choice, Soo-min." These words leave Soo-min speechless. For the first time, she wonders why he would willingly accept a forced marriage with someone who despises him. This mystery bothers her and begins to plant a seed of curiosity. As the days pass, Soo-min's behavior begins to shift, even if she won't admit it. She starts to observe Ji-hoon in a different light, noticing the strength he has to endure his circumstances. She discovers he's extremely skilled with his hands, not only as a gardener. He fixes everything he finds around the apartment and treats the place with a devotion she doesn't understand. One day, she watches as he spends hours repairing an old rocking chair she thought was useless, restoring it with care. On a particularly quiet night, they're having dinner together, and Soo-min finally decides to ask the question that has been bothering her. "Ji-hoon, why did you agree to this? Why did you agree to marry me, knowing I didn't want it?" He hesitates, looking directly into her eyes for the first time in days. His gaze is intense but calm, and Soo-min feels a shiver. "Because I thought it might be a chance to do something different." he answers, enigmatically. Soo-min realizes he has no intention of revealing anything more, which only deepens her curiosity and irritates her at the same time. What kind of answer was that? Over time, the clashes between them lessen, but the tension remains. Small moments in their daily lives turn into silent challenges. When she tries to ignore him, he remains indifferent. When she provokes him, he responds only with a calm gaze. With each passing day, Soo-min feels more and more unsettled by Ji-hoon's unwavering presence. Then, one afternoon while he's tending to a small makeshift garden in the apartment, Soo-min watches him without realizing it. He cares for the plants with a tenderness she's never seen before, and his dedication to something so simple and fleeting leaves her perplexed. For the first time, she wonders if perhaps she's the one who's wrong. Maybe Ji-hoon has something she's never had, a genuine sense of purpose. This thought disturbs her, but also intrigues her. Soo-min starts to feel a spark of something she doesn't quite understand. Is it anger? Admiration? She can't say, but she realizes that Ji-hoon is not merely a gardener in her eyes. He is a mystery, and she feels that something important is about to be revealed. As the days unfold, Soo-min finds herself confronted with her own arrogance and prejudices. Gradually, Ji-hoon's silence begins to tell her more than she would like to admit, and the forced coexistence that once felt like torment starts to become something she looks forward to every day, even if she will never openly admit it. Deep down, Soo-min starts to question who Kang Ji-hoon truly is, and even more, what she truly feels about him. As the days turn into weeks, Soo-min and Ji-hoon begin to share not only the small space of the apartment, but also moments of daily life, and unwillingly, the secrets each of them hides in their hearts. They still exchange tense glances and avoid long conversations, but something invisible begins to form between them. Soo-min tries to fight it, remembering the disdain she felt at the beginning. Yet each time she observes Ji-hoon in silence, she feels an inexplicable attraction. One day, while tidying up the apartment, Soo-min finds an old photograph tucked between Ji-hoon's books. In the photo, he's standing next to an older woman, wearing a rare, sincere smile, so different from the serious face he usually wears. She notices the resemblance between them and assumes the woman must be his mother. Curious, yet without the courage to ask him directly, Soo-min puts the photo back in its place. A few days later, she notices Ji-hoon seems more downcast than usual, and with a mix of nervousness and curiosity, she decides to break the tension. Ji-hoon, that woman in the photo? She's your mother, isn't she? He looks at her, surprised, but quickly lowers his gaze. Yes, that's my mother, he replies in an almost inaudible tone. Soo-min senses she's touched something deeply personal. He doesn't offer any more details, but that small response is enough to make her realize that, like her, Ji-hoon bears wounds and memories he prefers to keep hidden. One afternoon, Soo-min decides to visit the art gallery where her work is on display. She meets old friends and colleagues, but quickly feels the weight of their disapproving stares. Her friends, all part of the elite, look at her with a mix of shock and reproach. They whisper among themselves, and Soo-min can sense their judgmental glances when they mention, with disdain, her marriage to a gardener. She feels humiliated, but also furious at their prejudice and arrogance. When one of her friends makes a cruel joke about Ji-hoon, Soo-min loses her patience. "Zai, you know nothing about him," she retorts, her voice firm, her face flushed with anger. Her friend just laughs, mocking her, and Soo-min leaves the gallery feeling both shame and pride. She wonders why she felt so affected by their comments. She never imagined she would be defending Ji-hoon this way, and this unexpected reaction makes her question her own feelings. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon faces his own inner turmoil. One silent night, he looks over at Soo-min, who has fallen asleep on the couch while reading. He approaches her, hesitant, and gazes at her delicate and vulnerable face, so different from the arrogant, defiant expression he saw at the beginning. He remembers all the times she despised and mistreated him, but now he feels that behind her mask of arrogance, Soo-min hides a person he barely knows. Over the days, small acts of kindness begin to emerge between them. One time, Soo-min makes tea for Ji-hoon in silence and sets it down in front of him without a word. Surprised, he accepts the tea and watches her, but they both avoid each other's gaze. Another day, noticing she has a cold, Ji-hoon cares for her in silence, bringing her hot soup and placing a cold towel on her forehead while she sleeps. Soo-min pretends not to notice, but she wakes up with a strange warmth in her heart. This closeness, however, doesn't come without conflict. Soo-min begins to see the weight of responsibilities and hardships that Ji-hoon faces daily. One day, she finds him exhausted after a long day of work, his hands calloused and his gaze distant. For the first time, she understands that Ji-hoon bears a strength that goes far beyond the physical, a resilience and dignity she has never had to develop. On the other hand, Ji-hoon begins to see beyond Soo-min's arrogance and pride. He notices her fragility, the insecurity she hides behind her cold demeanor. One night, as they sit alone, Soo-min, her heart finally a little lighter, admits in a barely audible voice, "You must think I'm just a spoiled girl, don't you?" Ji-hoon looks at her, surprised by the unexpected confession, but shakes his head. "I don't think that, Soo-min. I think you were just surrounded by too many expectations." His words touch Soo-min deeply. She realizes that, for the first time, someone sees the pain she has hidden beneath her attitude. Ji-hoon doesn't see her as just an arrogant heiress, but as someone carrying her own struggles. However, as they grow closer, Soo-min begins to feel the weight of her social position. During a family gathering, she tries to mask her discomfort as her family members and friends continue to make derogatory remarks about Ji-hoon. Her father, Han Tae-jin, also watches everything in silence, growing increasingly irritated by their budding closeness. He had never expected Soo-min to develop real feelings for the man he chose to discipline her. With each new offensive comment, Soo-min feels a mix of shame and anger. She begins to realize that what she feels for Ji-hoon is deeper than mere respect. However, she battles with the shame and prejudice instilled in her since childhood. The embarrassment of being seen with someone beneath her social class weighs on her, but at the same time, the love and admiration for Ji-hoon grow stronger each day. Ji-hoon, for his part, begins to question his own worth. Observing Soo-min's world, the disdainful looks from her acquaintances, a sense of insecurity takes root. He begins to avoid her presence, keeping a certain distance, which Soo-min notices with a pang of hurt. One afternoon, when she finally decides to confront him about this distance, Ji-hoon simply replies with a bitter smile, "I'm not part of your world, Soo-min, and I don't want to be the reason for your shame." Soo-min feels her heart tighten. She knows Ji-hoon is speaking sincerely, and it bothers her. For the first time, she wonders if she would truly be capable of standing up for their relationship against society's judgments and, more importantly, against her father's disapproval. This inner conflict becomes a turning point for Soo-min. She realizes that, despite everything, Ji-hoon has come to occupy a place in her heart that she never thought possible. He challenges her, understands her, and makes her see a reality she has never known. But at the same time, she knows that facing her own family, her friends, and society will be a difficult battle. Thus, amid moments of doubt, pride, and discovery, Soo-min and Ji-hoon realize that something deep and inevitable is growing between them. Even though both carry scars and prejudices, the bond between them strengthens, and a profound, silent attraction begins to emerge, forcing them to face an impossible choice: to confront their own fears and societal pressures, or to give up on what both secretly desire with all their hearts. While Soo-min and Ji-hoon grapple with the choice between love and social pressures, Han Tae-jin, Soo-min's father, observes everything with growing suspicion. He never expected that his daughter would develop real feelings for Ji-hoon, the man he chose to tame her rebellious spirit. Tae-jin had believed that Soo-min's pride and vanity would be enough to drive her away from a man he considered unworthy of her. But to his irritation and surprise, not only did their relationship survive, but it seems to have strengthened them both. Determined that it's time to intervene more drastically, Tae-jin decides to dig into Ji-hoon's past, looking for anything he can use to break the bond between them and force Soo-min to abandon this relationship for good. He hires a private investigator to uncover anything Ji-hoon might be hiding. A few days later, Tae-jin receives a full dossier on Ji-hoon's life. As he leafs through the pages, he finds something that brings a cold, calculating smile to his face. A secret from Ji-hoon's past that could be devastating. Meanwhile, Soo-min and Ji-hoon's relationship is entering a delicate phase. Although they're closer than ever, Ji-hoon continues to distance himself emotionally, struggling with the feeling that he and Soo-min will never truly belong to the same world. He loves Soo-min in silence, but feels that he can't offer her the life she deserves. The growing distance between them begins to hurt Soo-min, who, despite not confessing it openly, feels the weight of his withdrawal. On a chilly afternoon, Taejin summons Ji-hoon for a meeting at the Han Mansion office. Ji-hoon is surprised by the invitation, but accepts, assuming it's some work-related matter. However, when he arrives, he finds Taejin alone, sitting behind his desk with a dark, calculating expression. "Sit down, Ji-hoon," Taejin orders with an ironic smile. Ji-hoon obeys, maintaining a calm yet cautious demeanor. After a long silence, Taejin places the dossier on the table, staring directly at Ji-hoon. "I know who you are, Ji-hoon. I know where you came from, and what you've been hiding from everyone." Ji-hoon feels a chill run down his spine. He holds his composure but can't hide the tension in his gaze as he tries to gauge just how much Taejin knows about his past. Taejin continues. "My daughter may be naive enough to believe you're an honorable man, but I know you have secrets, Ji-hoon, and I'm going to use them to ensure you disappear from her life forever." Taejin then reveals the dark secret that Ji-hoon has hidden for years. In the past, Ji-hoon was involved in a serious incident. In an attempt to protect his mother from a violent creditor, he got into a fight that ended badly. Although he was deemed innocent at the time, he has always carried the weight of that episode, watching his mother suffer the consequences and lose the house they lived in. After that, he swore to rebuild his life with integrity, trying to leave the past behind. Seeing his past laid bare, Ji-hoon feels a mix of shame and despair. Taejin uses each word to humiliate him, emphasizing that he is unworthy of Soo-min. Ji-hoon knows that if this story comes to light, it will not only tarnish his reputation, but also destroy the little dignity he has painstakingly rebuilt over the years. Taejin ends with a threat. "You will distance yourself from my daughter. You will leave her life forever, or I'll make sure this story ruins you. Think about the consequences, Ji-hoon." Ji-hoon's heart feels heavy. He knows he can't risk hurting Soo-min with the fallout from his past. With the weight of his decision pressing down on him, he returns to the apartment, resolved to distance himself, even if it means breaking his own heart. That night, Ji-hoon begins to pull away even further from Soo-min, becoming cold and reserved, avoiding any kind of closeness with her. Soo-min notices the drastic change in his behavior and, hurt, tries to confront him. "Why are you acting this way, Ji-hoon?" she asks, trying to hide the pain in her voice. I thought you cared about me." Ji-hoon, struggling against the urge to reveal the truth, responds coldly. "I was never part of your world, Soo-min, and I never will be. You deserve someone better, someone who can be with you without a shadow like mine." These words break Soo-min's heart. She tries to argue, but Ji-hoon stands firm, leaving her devastated. Convinced that he truly wants to leave her, Soo-min decides to return to the Han Mansion to confront her father, suspecting that he has something to do with Ji-hoon's sudden change. When Soo-min confronts her father, Taejin, he receives her with the same cold and distant gaze as always. She demands answers, but Taejin only says that he did what was necessary to protect the family's honor. Their confrontation reaches its peak, and Soo-min, furious, insists he reveal his true intentions. It's then that Taejin, losing his composure momentarily, lets slip a secret from his own past that changes everything. He too once faced a situation similar to Ji-hoon's. Before he built his empire, he was just a humble man who was rejected by the family of his first love because of his poor background. This episode filled Taejin with bitterness, leading him to build an unbreakable empire where he could exert absolute control over everything, including his daughter's life. Soo-min is shocked to hear this revelation. She realizes that her father's control and coldness were not just a matter of pride, but a way of preventing his daughter from making the same mistakes he believes he made. She sees, for the first time, the humanity behind Taejin's rigid exterior, though it doesn't excuse his actions. When Soo-min returns to the apartment, she finds Ji-hoon packing his things to leave, determined to follow through on his promise to stay away. But before he can go, she blocks the doorway, her eyes filled with tears. "I won't let you go, Ji-hoon," she says firmly, though her heart is racing. "I know about your past. And it doesn't change how I feel about you." Ji-hoon, surprised and moved, tries to convince her that she's making a mistake, but Soo-min doesn't back down. For the first time, she meets his gaze without fear or shame, determined to fight for what she feels. My father told me you're not worthy, but I see who you really are, Ji-hoon. You're the most honorable man I've ever known, and I won't let the past define our future. Soo-min's words touch Ji-hoon deeply. He realizes that, despite everything, she's willing to stand by him and protect the love they've built. The final confrontation with Tae-jin is inevitable. Soo-min decides to face him one last time, now stronger and more determined, making it clear that she is resolved to live her life with Ji-hoon, regardless of threats or their pasts. For the first time, Tae-jin sees his daughter as an independent woman, not merely as his heiress. He realizes he's lost control over her, but he also understands that his plan has failed. Rather than weaken Soo-min, it strengthened her. Their encounter ends in a silent truce. Tae-jin, though reluctant, begins to reflect on his actions, seeing his own reflection in Soo-min's determination, and perhaps in Ji-hoon's honor. With the past revealed and mutual support, Soo-min and Ji-hoon are ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Tae-jin, in a rare moment of vulnerability, finally gives his silent blessing, realizing he can no longer trap his daughter in his constraints. The weight of recent revelations still lingers over Soo-min and Ji-hoon, but now, free from secrets and threats, they are determined to build a life together, away from the manipulations and expectations that almost tore them apart. Even with the reluctant acceptance from Han Tae-jin, Soo-min knows the path they've chosen will still be filled with challenges. Yet for the first time in a long while, she feels she's living a genuine life, guided by her own choices. Ji-hoon, however, still battles with the ghosts of his past. Shame and insecurity about his own worth constantly make him question whether he is truly the right man for Soo-min. She notices the struggle he tries to hide and decides to confront him one quiet night. Sitting together on the small apartment sofa, Soo-min holds Ji-hoon's hands and looks him in the eyes, with a sincerity he cannot evade. Ji-hoon, she begins gently, I chose you, and that won't change. It doesn't matter what others think or what you believe you're worthy of. I know who you really are. Her words touch Ji-hoon deeply. He feels the weight of his own insecurities begin to dissolve, replaced by a newfound sense of belonging. With tears welling in his eyes, he embraces her, vowing that he will do everything within his power to take care of her and their love. While the couple finds strength in each other, Han Tae-jin faces an inner conflict he never imagined. Watching Soo-min's determination to live her life with Ji-hoon, he begins to question his own past. Memories of his first love, from whom he was separated because he was considered unworthy, resurface with an intensity that unsettles him. Tae-jin realizes that, in trying to prevent his daughter from making the same mistakes he believed he'd made, he was depriving her of something essential, the chance to discover the true value of love, in her own way. One quiet morning, Tae-jin goes to the old mansion garden, the same place where Ji-hoon once spent hours working. The flowers, now neglected, still bear traces of Ji-hoon's care. Tae-jin feels a mixture of regret and loneliness as he realizes that in his obsession with control, he pushed away the people he loved most. A few days later, Tae-jin decides to visit Soo-min and Ji-hoon, taking an action that surprises them both. He arrives at their modest apartment, where he is met with looks of shock and apprehension. Soo-min's heart races with nervousness, unsure of what to expect, while Ji-hoon stands firm, though he feels a pang of anxiety. Tae-jin looks at the couple in silence for a moment before finally speaking, his voice low but filled with sincerity. I made many mistakes. I believed I was protecting you, Soo-min, but in reality, I was trying to protect myself, he admits with a hint of bitterness. I lost many important things because of my pride, but if you are willing to forgive, I am ready to support your choices. Tae-jin's words move Soo-min, who never thought she would hear such a vulnerable confession from her father. She realizes that behind all his arrogance and control, he was a man trying to overcome his own pain, but one who lost himself along the way in trying to protect his daughter. With emotion, Soo-min chooses to embrace her father, a gesture of forgiveness that brings closure to years of resentment and misunderstanding. For Ji-hoon, this unexpected truce represents a kind of liberation. He understands that Soo-min's love and Tae-jin's acceptance have given him a chance he never imagined he would have. Without needing to say a word, he bows respectfully to the man who once despised him, but who now, for the first time, sees him as someone worthy of his daughter's love. With Taejin's reluctant but sincere support, Soo-min and Ji-hoon begin to rebuild their lives, now with a love that is stronger and truer. Soo-min decides to pursue her artistic dreams and devotes herself to her paintings with a renewed intensity and passion. Ji-hoon, meanwhile, stands by her side, encouraging her and helping her build a life that is simple but full of meaning. One day, Soo-min holds her first art exhibition, drawing in various people, including art critics, friends, and even family members who had once criticized her. Standing beside her works, Soo-min feels a profound sense of peace, knowing that she has finally achieved something truly her own, something no one can take from her. Ji-hoon watches from afar, proud and emotional. He understands that despite everything they went through, they have found a balance between their differences. He knows their path will still be marked by challenges, but watching Soo-min smile, he feels grateful for every obstacle they overcame. Soo-min approaches him, gently taking his hand as if to say without words, "We're in this together." That night, after the exhibition, Soo-min and Ji-hoon walk through the city's glowing lights, hand in hand. They look toward the future with hope, ready to build a life rooted in love, respect, and freedom. Free from Taejin's control and now supported by mutual forgiveness, they realize that the true value of love lies in the choices they make for one another day by day. As they walk, Soo-min looks up at Ji-hoon and smiles, knowing that despite all the difficulties, she has found what she was always searching for: a life that's genuine, alongside the man she chose with her heart. And so, they continue forward together, ready to face whatever challenges come their way, knowing that the love they've built will be the foundation for a new story,